Good day, class. So today, this week, I should say, we're going to talk about organizational change and change management. Right. This in itself is a whole discipline and science and topic that's discussed on a regular basis because we realize that everyone goes through changes. All organizations and things go through some kind of metamorphosis in order to be successful and adapt. Um, so it's only fair and expected that organizations themselves will have to go through change, right? And but when we talk about change, we have to take into consideration the people that are being affected by the change, and you know what are the things that catalyze change, right? What are the things that prompt or make change necessary, right? So areas of pressure for change, right? A lot of times it's the people, right? We just need to switch up uh, the folks that we have in our institution or organization. Maybe they don't fit the particular goal or objective or mission that we're going to. Maybe they're not performing as well as we like, or the company's just going in a different direction, and so we have to change the people. Other thing is technology. At times, technology will cause companies to change because technology offers a new and maybe innovative and cost efficient way of doing something. And so implementing that technology will require some change on the part of the organization, but mostly on the part of the workforce, because the workforce is the ones going to have to implement and use the new technology. And that is not always something that is readily accepted. Many times people don't necessarily like change, especially if they're good at something and they're comfortable with whatever the situation is, the current situation is. They don't like change, especially change when it comes to technology, because that means now I'm having to learn something new that I may not necessarily be proficient at. Another area of change is information processing and communication, right? How do we take the information that we get and turn it into something that we can use that will better our business? And how do we, send information across all the various sections and departments in the organization in which, we can, facilitate, a change of maybe how we address a certain thing, or how we discuss things within in the workplace, or how information is disseminated also. Another area of change, a pressure for change, is competition, right? So looking at what the competition are doing may cause you to have some, implement some changes within your own organization in order to make sure that you are competitive with the market. Being competitive with the market is something that you know most organizations take seriously and have to consider in order for them to be sustainable, and we're looking longevity. If you're not competitive with the market, or you're not keeping up with the market, you're probably going to end up behind, um, and also lagging in providing customer satisfaction, and with the demand for whatever it is you're selling or providing will probably be way behind the competition, right? So the competition definitely has a big part in whether or not you implement some change, or it prompts change within the organization, right? So again, we're looking at this table here. If we look at people, all right, and some of the examples and the type of pressure for change, it gives you generational, perspective at first. Generation X, Y, millennials. We know there's a change there as far as the different ways that people approach work. Global labor supplies. We know there's a change there, and the fact that now we can maybe access our supplies from different places. Workforce diversity, which is always something now that's at the forefront of most organizations. They want to be inclusive and be known as being inclusive in a diverse um, place to be. Excuse me. Technology, again, the internet, manufacturing, and space, right? And so all these things here definitely will add pressure for change, because now we talk about technology, as I mentioned before. It's going to require more education and training. Um, Products are getting faster, right? And products come to the market faster and leave the market faster, right? Things that are new today could be old in a matter of time, depending on how quickly that particular industry is moving. And when it comes to technology, there's always a new technology being introduced to the to corporate America, to the business world, right? Because there's always a desire to lower costs, increase revenue, which leads to an increase in profits. All right. We look at the next category: information processing of communication. Again, talking about satellites and video conferencing, social networking. How do we, really sit down and talk to each other? How do we, figure out how we can work better in the workplace? And then you have competition with the global markets, international trade agreements. Global competition definitely will cause you to have some change in your own organization, because again, you're trying to keep up with not only the domestic competition but the global competition. What are my competitors doing in areas not close to me? All right, what are they doing in Europe? What are they doing in Africa? What are they doing in China or Asia? Right, as compared to what we're doing here in America. Right, that may prompt you to change, because you may see something that maybe an improved technique from the way that you're doing it as a company, or you may see things that you don't necessarily like and you want to avoid. You may, notice that the same thing is happening within your organization, and you are deliberately trying to, curtail that behavior. All right. So when we talk about change, right, there's a couple different models, right? But Lewin's process model is probably one of the more relevant and well-known models. Okay, so Lewin's pretty much, posit that organization change requires a systematic process of moving from one condition to another, right? And within that, he talks about unfreezing, change, and then refreezing. Okay, so when we unfreeze, right, we basically acknowledge, or at least try to um, let people know, let the organization know that, what, we need a change. Okay, that's really what the unfreezing is at, because now what I'm trying to do is unlock your mindset as to the status quo. Right, I'm trying to get you to realize that, oh, a change is needed, and that if a change is needed, then we are probably going to take action. Okay, and this action comes in the form of the change, and the change is basically moving away from the old way of doing things to a new way, right? And that's all change is, no matter what context you are looking at it from. Change will always be, from one frame of one process or one way of doing things to something totally brand new, right? Something unfamiliar. And so this is where really you kind of run into the challenges here of people accepting, that the old way is no longer the way that things are going to be, and then them also accepting the new way and understanding that the new way will at some point become the status quo or the old way, right? And then once you have that kind of accomplished, then you go into refreezing, which again, that makes, the new behaviors permanent and resistant to further change, right? So now that we've we went through the unfreezing process by making people aware and acknowledging that a change is needed. We've gone through the change process where we are now actually executing or implementing whatever new way, that or new process or technique that we want to see happening, and moving that in and moving out the old way of doing things, right? And then once that becomes kind of, ingrained and people are doing it on a regular basis, then we go to refreezing, which locks in that particular new behavior, new process, new techniques, right? And people are now accepting of it, and is now the norm, right? And so once it becomes the norm, at that point it's the status quo, and then it goes into refreezing, and it's the new state, right? So in looking into the diagram here, right? or the figure, right? You have the old state, you unfreeze, the awareness of change, awareness of need for change, right? You actually change, move from old state to new state, and then you refreeze. That's the stage where you lock things in, and the new becomes the regular or the permanent change, and now you're in a new state where now we have implemented the new process, and it is now the way we do things. All right, so that's the new state. So moving from old state to new state is definitely um, important and critical to organization success. Right. Then we have the continuous change process model. Right. Incorporates the forces for change. It's a problem solving process, a change agent, and transition management. Right. It takes top management perspective. Right. Perceives forces and trends that indicate need for change. Determines alternatives for change and selects the appropriate alternative. Right. So here we're talking about really the beginning stages of change, right? And where the change is actually, initiated. Okay. So, the leadership will look at the situation or the state of whatever it is, the organization or the department or section, and we'll notice certain things, right? Notice certain influences that may need to be changed, right? They may need to be altered in some way, and then from there, some um, alternative options are produced. So basically, a session is a meeting is convened, and people start throwing out ideas and maybe some courses of action that are feasible and make sense in order to enact this change based on the perceived forces and trend, right? And then from there, they select the appropriate alternative. Right. And so when we look at how this whole continuous change process go, right, you see the forces for change, right? You see the things that you may want to change or are causing you to change, right? You recognize and define the problem. Let's really look at what's going on and get a good idea, and define in very detailed terms what the problem is. Okay, that is an extremely important part in change management and continuous change, because if you don't identify and define the problem correctly, you're not going to come up with the appropriate solution. You'll come up with many solutions, but you won't come up with the appropriate solution because the problem hasn't been properly identified or defined, right? So what is the issue at hand? We don't necessarily want to problem solve for symptoms. We want to problem solve for the core or the cause of the problem, right? So we have to define the problem very well, with a lot of detail, so that people understand what it is they're really trying to solve. And then once you do that, then you get to the problem solving process. And once you get to the problem solving process, this is where you sit down and really hash out what's going on. Okay. Um, then you implement the change. All right. You implement the change. And then you measure, evaluate, and control. Right. The measurement and evaluation aspect of this is extremely important also, because this is the way you tell whether the or not the change is effective. Right. Without evaluation, you really don't know if that change that you made is really working, if it was worth changing, right? And you don't know if you need to go back to the old way it was, things were being done, because you really can't tell if it's improved at all, right? But throughout all that, you notice that there's a change agent, okay? And the change agent really is that thing or person, um, that kind of make sure everything is sort of connected. Okay, that's that person or that thing that's really managing the change. Okay, and making sure that the change is happening. Sometimes we call that a champion. It could be something that effect. And a champion, is considered a change champion. It's kind of synonymous with change agent, but at the end of the day, their role really is about a senior level person with who has the authority and the influence to make decisions and changes, and they're the one that are advocating for these changes and all these different things that are going on. Hey,
Guess where I'm at.
let me see. Let me see. Give me a minute. You are a yoga.
I did yoga this morning.
F45.
There's no way in hell I could do that again.
I don't know then.
I'm on a walk.
You what?
I'm on a walk.
Well, I know that. Oh, that part. Yeah, but
But I'm not walking, very fast or very long.
I'm about
My
to
ankle
say.
felt good today, so
Oh yeah. So you testing the ankle out,
yeah,
and it's hanging in there.
like barely.
Barely.
No, I expected my tennis shoe to fit a lot tighter, and it's actually went right on with like no problem.
Okay. All right. Don't go out there. Step on a rock or something, or the ankle's weak right now. Your little pebble might throw you off. Yeah. Toppled over. Like,
I gotta get it strong though, because I just ordered a bunch of dresses.
what that? You better get some nice sneakers to go with them.
No, I want to wear heels.
Yeah, you go ahead and wear them heels if you want. The ankle ain't never gonna get right.
Well, for sure, I need to be able to get into heels for the wedding.
Well, this is true, but still, hey, you might have to get one of the old granny heels or them work heels
Shut up.
or the block heels.
I have some wedges, but I have wedges on when I fucked it up, so.
Yeah, exactly. So there's no, yeah, I don't think there's any hope for you, girl. It might be sneakers for you or Birkenstocks.
Oh, I got some black shoes. I got some like little heel black ones that are like the block heel.
Mm-hmm.
Like little Mary Janes kind of, but they're like a little bit shorter of a heel. They are more like work heels.
Yeah, I mean, as you can see from the figure, there's also a transition management team, right? And so the transition management, their whole goal is to make sure that all these things happen, right? All the implementation of the change gets implemented properly, and they are the ones that really measure, evaluate, and control what's going on, right? And so they're a group of folks that are part of the process the whole way, but really their key role is to make sure that once we start implementing the change, that people are adhering to the change. The change is not, to really combat some of the challenges what people are pushing against the change, right? And they work in conjunction with a change agent to make sure that everything goes as planned. Okay. So here's a more formal example of a change agent. Okay. Person responsible for managing a change effort. And as I said before, normally it's someone at the senior level who is really more or less the advocate for the change, right? To promote the change and to be the one that says, look, we're going to benefit from the change in this way. So don't fight it. Please, embrace the change, give it a moment, and you will see that the change will be of benefit to everyone. And so, the change agent, right, really is pivotal when it comes to change management, because that's the person that people will look at um, to see whether or not they should be accepting of the change, and how the workforce will perceive the change, how important the change is, right? If there is no change agent, especially someone from the higher levels of leadership that is pushing or promoting the change, then the workforce may not think the change is that serious or that important, and may really push back against it for a long time and curtail the efforts that the organization is trying to do. And so the change agent really has to be out there and pitching and promoting and really just putting everybody's mind at ease about the change and what the change is going to affect, how it's going to affect the employees, and the benefit of the change, really. All right. And you have the transition management team, as I said before, they are basically there to make sure that, everything as far as the change is concerned happens. All right. So they are part of planning, organizing, and implementing the change. The transition management team is important because they have a pulse as to whether or not a change is taking effect. They just make sure that the changes and all the things that go along with the change are being, put into place, and that people have everything they need to make the change as smooth as possible. They realize that if there's any challenges that present themselves to the people that are being subject to the change, they're very unlikely to want to push through those challenges and actually make changes to what we make the change that we would like them to make. Right. So transmission management team is an important aspect in this. Right. This all leads to really organizational development. Right. The things that we are doing, strategies, structures, and process for improving an organization's effectiveness. Okay, so that's what OD really is about. What changes, what strategies, what techniques, what things can we do to not only improve the organization but also improve the people professionally and personally. Okay, we have system-wide organizational development. Really involves structural change, and that's a kind of a revamping of the divisions and maybe the sections, reporting changes, right? Relationships of who's reporting to who, who's in charge of what, and those kind of things, right? And so that is also one of the things that can be considered a change, right? Doesn't it say always have to be a change in people? It could just be a change in the way things are being reported, or who, or the chain of command. Okay, um, and how those structural changes affect people's compensation or affect people's decision making ability, right? Where you do a vertical integration where you put one department under another, because it just makes sense. They kind of correlate, as far as their actions and some of the shared responsibilities and objectives. So it makes sense to put them together, in order to, maximize the resources and to cut costs. And so that could be a change that will, cause you to have to relieve a manager, senior manager of their position, because you don't want to say have two senior managers for one department, right? So if you're going to merge departments or merge sections, only one person could be in charge, and so you have to decide who's going. That person's going to be, and that person who is no longer in charge may be the deputy or the assistant, or the second in charge. But how's that going to affect the decision making capability? Are they no longer going to have input into what happens, and that kind of thing? All right. We have some contemporary approaches to system-wide organizational development. We have re-engineering, rethinking, and then quality of work life. Okay. So let's see here what they go back. All right. So when we talk about re-engineering, we're really looking at how do we look at the systems and processes and streamline them, make them better, right? How do we, you know, put in place um, better techniques and processes, in order to, make it more beneficial to the company, so that they can cut costs again, and increase profit. Right? We have rethinking, where maybe what we thought was our strategy is not necessarily the way we need to go about, obtaining our objectives or our mission, because that may not they may not necessarily lead to where we want to be. So now we rethink our our vision, our strategy, our approach, our plan. Right? Rethink the direction or trajectory that we thought was once the way that was the way to go, may not be the way to go, based on the external environment, all right, based on the competition, based on the resources we have available to us, based on the labor market. There's a lot of things to consider if you're rethinking your approach to something. Okay, and you want to change or develop your organization, you may have to rethink, and revamp your plan, and revamp what you thought was going to be your future. The last one is quality of work life, right? And so looking at the work that is being done by your employees, how do I improve my employees, overall work experience, right? Do I have it to where I have flex hours, maybe, right? That could be a system wide um, change that contributes to organizational development, right? We have flex hours where you work a certain amount of hours one week, and then that affords you every Friday off, or whatever the case may be. Or maybe we change it to where we have a remote aspect to the way people work, or telecommute maybe 2 or 3 times out of the week, and then the other days they're in the office, right? Or we may have to where we have a mandatory lunch break, or we have a mandatory morning meeting where where we just get together and really to see how we're doing, and not necessarily to talk any business, just shop, right? We're just talking and trying to catch up with stuff. But the quality of work life, it's important because that all contributes to job satisfaction, which contributes to productivity and efficiency for the organization. The happier you are in your work life, the more productive you will more likely be, because you're actually happy to be where you're at, right? You're not um, necessarily unhappy about going to work, which is again an important aspect, right? You don't want people to be unhappy coming to work. You don't want people to have anxiety, worried about them coming to work. And there's many situations where people, this a phenomenon, they call it the Sunday blues, in which people start to get anxiety and stress out on sometimes on Saturday, but mostly on Sundays, because they have to go to work on Monday. And so the fact that they have to go to work to an environment that they may not necessarily be comfortable in and may not be happy in gives them anxiety. And so you have the Sunday blues, right? And so what that does, that affects your ability to enjoy the actual time you're in, the present time that you're in, right? Because you're so worried about Monday, but it's Sunday, and instead of just enjoying the moment, you're more concerned about what's going to happen the next day. And nothing is going to happen. It's just that you're going to an environment that you may not necessarily be happy about. So being able to affect the work life of an individual is a big deal. And if anything you can do to improve it, is going to definitely translate into more productivity and efficiency for the company, right? If we look at Walton's categorization of quality of work life programs, right, we look at it, a few different things: adequate and fair compensation, safe and healthy work environment, development of human capacities, growth and security, total life space, social integration, constitutionalism, social relevance. All these things, if you look at them, all things that we care about as people, as a society, outside of work, right? In our day-to-day lives, we are concerned about our social status amongst our peers and our colleagues and our family and friends, right? Um, we want to be compensated fairly for whatever we do. All right. And we want to feel safe and healthy at work, right? We don't want an environment where I feel that I'm going to get harassed, or I feel that I'm being, humiliated or bullied, right? All these things are real things that happen in the workplace. They may happen subtly, but they do happen. And so, if we can address these things within the organizational development aspect and have some change that will affect these particular areas, then more than likely it's going to be a good thing for the company, all right? Because it's going to be a good thing for the person. And if we can get the individual, to feel better and to, you know, um, have more of a, um, just be happy at work, then, that is definitely going to translate into better things for the company. Okay. All right. All right. So now let's look at some tasks and technological change, right? So when we talk about tasks and technological change, we're really talking about task redesigning, right? When you take the task that's involved in doing the work and you just revamp it, okay? Whether it be the way it's done or what's being used to do it, right? or both, right? And so you redesign the task to make it better, to make it more efficient. There might be some steps in there that have been suggested to be taken out because they're not necessary, and they just add unnecessary or extraneous or extra steps that don't really add any value. Technological change, really looking at, excuse me, how our inputs, right, are transferred into outputs, right, and via technology. How can we take whatever raw material we have and transform it into the desired, result that we're looking for via the technology, via being new software or new hardware or some kind of new piece of machinery or whatever the technology is, right? Implementing that technology in conjunction with a task redesign, right, and making it more efficient and more productive for the worker, right, and then in turn, again, it makes it more beneficial for the workplace. When we look at Griffin's integrated framework, right, for introducing job changes, 9 steps that reflect, kind of the intricacies between individual jobs and the total organization. So let's take a look at these things, right? So step one is just recognition of need for a change, which is nothing new, right? We always have to look at the situation and ask ourselves, is there an actual need for change? And if there is a need for change, right, we have to acknowledge that and let everyone know that there's a need for change. But the first step is really to recognize or acknowledge there's a need for change. But first, you have to be able to adequately define and identify what that change is, right, or what the problem is that requires a change. Step two is the selection of task redesign as a potential intervention, right? So we're looking at some of the things some of the tasks that we have currently, and which ones need to be, or could possibly be revamped, right? Which ones could use some reconfiguration. All right, so we have to look at that. The third step is the diagnosis of work system and context. And within that, what we do is we do an analysis, right, of the work system and the context, basically, right? We look at all the existing jobs, right? And look at those jobs and see, okay, which job is no longer relevant? Which jobs do we not need? Which jobs do we need? Okay. We also look at our existing workforce, right, in comparison to that, and say, well, we have a surplus of a certain particular skill set, or we have a deficit in a particular set of skill sets. And so we're doing an analysis of the workforce to see where our deficiencies and where our strengths lie, right, where our surpluses lie in something that we not necessarily need and we can cut out. We look at our technology, right? What state is our technology in? Is it state of the art? Is it, more or less, 2 generations back, maybe a generation back? Is it something that is easily replaceable? Was there a large investment made into this particular technology that will require us to maintain it for a little bit longer, as it amortizes over time? Or just something that, technology that we can get rid of and it's not going to interrupt or disturb our operations, right? Because we're always looking for, in the key one of the key things is we're always looking for a seamless change, right? We're always looking for a change that doesn't disrupt our operations, right? We want to be um, very much where people don't notice that there's a change, right? There should be no hiccups or no disruption in what people have become accustomed to as far as how the operation is going, how the day-to-day functioning of the organization and the section goes, right? And so if you're implementing a new technology, let's just say you have a call center and you're implementing a new set of technology and people are calling to a call center on a regular basis, they should not know that you are trying to switch out your system, right? It should be something to where they they notice there's a change for the better. They just didn't realize what it is and when did it happen, right? They don't know, right? And that's what you want. You don't want anyone to really, you want it to be seamless and very much smooth sailing with no hiccups to the consumer experience or to the workplace experience, right? To the workers experience. And you want it to where it doesn't disrupt too much of what they're doing, right? Except for the change itself. But you really want to get an idea of how the technology that's being used is going to affect the workforce, right? If we decide to change something. The next thing is a diagnosis of the organization design, right? How are we set up? What's the hierarchy? Are we a flat organization, or do we have many levels where we have a higher hierarchy, right? Or is it necessarily just one or two levels, right? And maybe we need to increase the level of scrutiny and the level of oversight, so we add more layers to the approval process, authorization authorities, right? And we look at that. We also diagnose the leader behavior, right? How are the leaders behaving, and do we need to make a change in our leadership, right? And change some of the responsibilities to some of the authority that others do have, right? And maybe get a new perspective on things by having a new leader for specific areas, or shifting people around so that they have an idea of what each particular section does. So we're going to, do a cross-functional type training to where we move leaders every 2 years into different positions within the company, so they get an overall understanding of what goes on, and how other departments and section integrate and come together to contribute to the overall goal, right? Diagnosis of group and social processes, right? And so all this happens within the context of the work system, right? And looking at exactly like, how do we work, right? The actual work part. How is the relationship between co-workers? How is the relationship between co-workers and their bosses? How is the relationship between workers and the technology and all this other stuff, right? And is there something in there that we can refine to make the process a little bit better? Okay. Then we have a cost benefit analysis of proposed change, right? This is where you kind of decide whether or not you're gonna make a change or not, right? When it boils down to the cost, and really deciding as to whether or not this change is going to be beneficial to you as compared to the cost. This is um, is the squeeze worth the juice, right? Or the juice worth the squeeze, whichever way you want to kind of put it, right? Um, Really, if I'm going to spend $1 million, but I'm only going to increase my revenue by $100,000, right? Is that worth it, right? Is it a one-time investment, or is it something that's going to be long-term? I'm going to have to spread it out and amortize it over, a certain period of time. So you look at the cost benefit analysis, and where's the break even point? How long is it going to take me to, not only recoup my monies, right? But how long is it going to take me to actually to um, to experience or to see the benefit, okay? To the actualization of the benefit, right? You have, in when we're talking about, for example, like stocks, and you have a stock, and it's increased by a certain amount, right? That those are unrealized gains, right? You haven't really actually taken advantage of the increase because you haven't sold the stock. The minute you sell the stock, then those are realized gains or benefits, right? And so within step 4, when we do the cost benefit analysis, that's what we're trying to figure out. What and when are my realized gains going to be, or benefits going to be um, seen, right? And so we look at, okay, if I make this change, what's the benefit? What are the the disadvantages? Okay, and then from there we decide, oh, is it something we're going to do? Or is it something that we're not going to do? Okay, and so once we decide it's a go, then we have to formulate the strategy for redesign, right? We have to come up with our plan or our approach, and how we're really going to, redesign some of these tasks, for the better. And that really boils down to the actual workers and in serious analysis with them, in conjunction with just an overall analysis of each of the tasks by HR and by the by the managers and that kind of thing. Right. Once we do that, we formulate the plan and we figure out what we're going to redesign, how we're going to redesign it, when we're going to redesign it, and to what extent. Then we can go ahead and implement those task changes. Okay, and then from there, we will have to have some supplemental changes, right? If we change the task, we may have to change some equipment that goes with it. We may have to change some hours, or we may have to bring in some auxiliary things in order to support that particular change in the task, right? This is where the supplemental changes come in. And then step 9 is really an evaluation of the task, okay? Over a certain period of time, we'll give it, maybe 6 months, a year, sometimes 3 months, whatever the case may be, depending on, the task change and, what it entails. We'll give it an appropriate timeline in which we will come in and evaluate the task and try to figure out whether or not those redesigns that we put in place are really beneficial, right? Or have done what we expected them to do, and we're going to reap some benefit that is going to be more advantageous to us, and that the cost of doing this particular changes is less than the benefit. Right? The rewards outweigh the risk. The rewards outweigh the work and the cost that we're going to have to put out there, yeah, or the amount of money we're going to spend, and not just money, time. Right? The time that we're going to take to do all these changes, that may put us behind, or may have us lagging behind the competition who may be ahead of the process, or may not be in the process at all. But we still have to figure out a time component. But it's definitely going to push back a few things as far as related to time, and we may not be able to keep up with certain things as quickly as we once did, or we may be behind the competition or behind the market in general. But we know that once the changes are put into effect, and we start actually executing them, that we will eventually catch up, right? So like I used to like to say, it's a marathon, it's not a sprint sometimes, right? And so you have to look at it that way. We have to kind of pace ourselves and not necessarily worry about what's going on externally, but worry about more what's going on internally, and have a pace that makes sense for not only the workforce, but for the things that we're putting into place, and giving those things time to actually blossom, and for us to see the change in those things. So now let's look at some people orientated change techniques, right? And so as you start to develop the organization, some of the things that go into developing, organization, because it's really about developing the people, all right? You delve into training, all right? You'll delve into management development. You'll delve into team building, and you'll delve into survey feedback. And so as you start to look at all these particular areas, right? Especially training. Training is one of those places where you can make a significant impact, in not only the organization, but in the worker's personal growth. Okay. And really, we're trying to improve the person's skill sets, okay, or give them new skill sets. All right. And it could be a number of methods that we can use in order to do that. Right. In the classroom scenario, we use PowerPoints, and we use case studies and that kind of thing. It's the same thing in corporate American organizations all over the world. We use lecture methods, we use discussions, we use films and videos, and do studies on past actions and things that worked and didn't work, right? More of a retrospective type approach. So there are many methods in which to learn to train people that are they're pretty effective. The whole point is that you want to find a method that is appropriate for not only the audience that you're talking to or you're trying to train, but the training itself, right? Does it lend itself to, you know, a presentation, or is it something where I should probably doing a practical application, but it's because it's better that it's more of a tactile endeavor, right? And what I mean by tactile is more a lot of the people learn by touching and actually doing, going through the motions and seeing it live. And so, that method might be more appropriate. So those are the things that you have to think about, when you endeavor into a training change, right? And also when you do the training, you have to think about who's delivering the training. Is this somebody that is knowledgeable in the area, or is this someone, a third party that you brought in that is going to facilitate the training because they've proven themselves to be someone that is reliable and can get the content across and can produce results. Locations matter when it comes to training, right? Where you're going to do it. You're going to do it in the classroom. You're going to do it in an off-site. You're going to do it at the company or on a company property, organizational property, or are you going to change it up altogether and do it, as a sort of a retreat, getaway slash work thing, right? There's a number of ways, but location and um, the conditions of the location matter, right? The temperature matters. Is it hot, cold? Is it after or before lunch, right? Is it in a place where there's a lot of distractions and noise going on? All those things matter because in order to learn, people have to be in an environment and feel a certain way and be ready to accept the training. Okay. And so if people are hungry, they're tired, if they're not interested in whatever is being trained on, a lot of times that can be alleviated by removing people from their day-to-day location. We're going to change up the environment. And that changing environment allows you to have people that are more motivated to learn and train because they feel like they're in a new situation and they're away from all the things that would take them away from the training, right? That's one of the benefits. The downside is that usually those things cost money. And so, if you're deciding to do an off-site training, it's going to cost you, a few dollars, and not only in attaining the site and coordinating all that, but also compensating the folks for the days they're not at work and they're getting the training. You have to provide lunch, breakfast, dinner, those things, right? You may have to provide lodging, so it costs money for those things to happen. If you can do it on the job, a lot of times that is preferred method. But again, having a classroom training environment helps because and it is probably the more preferred as far as lecture or classroom lecture discussion combination because it can address a large amount of people fairly quickly, and you can give a lot of information. And so it's that method is usually preferred. Some difficulty that you have is really knowing whether or not there's a transfer of learning. All right, if there's no transference, and basically that really means that whatever I'm teaching is the group learning, right? Is that information or that new skill or improvement of skills, whatever, are people retaining that information and able to apply it later on down the line, right? So that's called transference, right? When we're trying to transfer of learning. If there's no transfer of learning, you're basically wasting your time because people are going to come in, they'll sit through the training, but they're not going to relearn anything. This is why we have exams or assessments or some evaluation tool in which to figure out whether or not transfer of learning has occurred, right? So that's the whole purpose of test. Really, is to see whether or not you've retained and you understand information, and that that information will now you will now use it to hopefully do your job better. Okay. Management development programs, right? Multifaceted, complex, long-term process with no quick and simple approach, right? Every organization should have some management development programs. Okay. um, the programs are there in order to, one, increase the aptitude and increase the acumen of your managers or your middle managers or your senior leadership at times, right? Learning how to be a manager and a leader, right? It's not something that is inherent to everyone. Some people are great at being managers and being leaders. Others, it takes a little time for them to understand the dynamics of personal relationships, the dynamics of how to delegate, how to assess and evaluate people objectively, right? Because you're going to be writing evaluations, that kind of thing. You have to evaluate people's work. So having something where we can develop managers and help them build their skill set and build their toolbox up to where it lines up with how the company, is being operated, and those things that the company wants to endeavor and reach is really the key. Okay. um, as it says in the bottom, bullet, the utility and value of management development is not proven. So there's no real research based data that says having a management development program works. That's what it boils down to. And this is true. People can definitely go into all types of management programs, management development programs, trying to better themselves, but doesn't necessarily mean that they're ever going to use the particular skill sets. Uh, Most people inherently go back to the way that they were before because it takes a conscious effort to change. And it change for people or in people takes a long time. All right. And as it says, it's a long-term process with no quick and simple approach. Changing a person takes a long time. Making a person comfortable as a leader or as a manager and them understanding the dynamics of relationships and and be able to manage relationships aside from theirs is a skill set, and it takes time, and some people don't necessarily pick up on it. So again, you may you may get to that point where you send a bunch of managers and leaders to a certain type of training, you expect them to develop in a certain way, but nothing actually changes, right? Because it does take a long time, and it takes a willingness and open-mindedness to want to get better, which is the major key, is the desire to be better. If you don't have the desire to be better, then you probably are not going to be better manager, better leader. You're just going to go through the motions. Next thing is team building goals, right? We want to set team goals and priorities, right? We want to better understand how to analyze and allocate the way work is performed. We want to examine how a group is working, and we want to examine relationships among those doing the work, right? These are all team dynamics, okay? But again, if we are talking about um, if we're talking about building a team, right? As the team leader, you have to set the goals and the priorities, right? These are our objectives. These are the things that are most important, 1 through 5, or whatever the case may be. You have to look at the way people are doing the job, because the way that an individual does the job is 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 vital, because that's contributing to the group, it's contributing to the team. So if you work slowly, or if you work, very quickly, but um, your um, your precision, right, is not there, or you're kind of, more of a big picture person and not more detailed, that affects how we work, right? So because each individual is a component of the team, and their impact, right, and how they do things is going to have an impact, I should say, on the team dynamics. As they say, you have to worry about the weakest link in the chain. Okay, the weakest link in the chain determines how the team is characterized. All right. You also want to examine how a group is working. Is this team, do they work well? Are there some challenges as far as relationships? Is there synergy? Really, is what it boils down to, right? Is there some cohesiveness to the team? Do they flow very, very easily, or is it more of a conscious effort to come together and to be able to work together as a team? And you can see this in, you know, depending on, how what team it is. Okay, but I'm going to use sports as an analogy. Teams that win championships and are successful are teams that have individuals that recognize their role, recognize their responsibilities, and recognize the fact that they have to compromise in certain areas and they have to push or excel in others, right? And so understanding that and looking at how the team is working, right, as a group is the job of the team leader, right, or the coach, right? And the coach will at times put things together and piece things together and move things out or put things in based on how they think the team is working as a group, right? I may know as the team leader that, John and Bobby don't necessarily work well together. Not that they don't like each other, but they both bring the same thing to the table. And so if they both bring the same skill set to the table, there may be a challenge as to who has the prevailing authority, which direction are we going to go in? Are we going to take John's direction or Bobby's direction? So you have to kind of look at those things. Say, okay, you know what? I'm not going to put John and Bobby on this project together. I'm going to put Bobby on a different project. I put John on this project because I know that although they like each other, they don't necessarily work well, or it will be a redundant skill set that I really don't need. I could put somebody else in there that brings a unique skill set that will contribute or add value to the team. And then we want to examine relations among those doing the work. As I said before, we want to look at how people deal with each other, right? Being professionally or personally, but you can always tell how good a team gels by the fact that if they hang out with each other and spend time with each other outside of work, then you probably have a good team. If you have, or not that you don't have a good team, you have a cohesive team, a team that is that is working well together. They get along because they enjoy hanging out with each other even after work. So you can look at that and say, well, if they enjoy hanging out together when there's no requirement to, then when there is a requirement to, they're going to be a good team. And also the ability to um, feel like you can speak up. Okay, this is one of the things about a team that can be very destructive. If team members feel that they are going to be ostracized or they will be demeaned or laughed at because they make a suggestion to the team that may not at first appearance seem like something that's viable and makes sense, then they probably aren't going to propose it. They probably aren't going to challenge anything that comes up. So you want the team environment to be very open and relaxed, and everyone to feel that they have an ability to voice their opinion and thoughts and ideas, because that's the whole point of having the team, is to be able to have some dissent or some disagreements about how we're approaching things and to find the best solution amongst those two disparities, right? As far as, okay, I think we should do it this way, I think we should do it this way. What's the middle ground that kind of merges or is a hybrid of those two ideas? Now, again, you may not get everything you want. That person is not going to get everything they want. But at the end of the day, we will reach the goal um, by having a compromise and having a hybrid or a merger of ideas and thoughts. But there has to be space in which people can, feel comfortable in voicing their difference in approach. Right. All right. The last thing, is survey feedback. And so survey feedbacks are really useful tool because they help the employee voice their opinion, and in many instances they can stay anonymous, right? They're not worried about consequences or any repercussions that's going to come from them maybe going against what was done, or feeling that maybe someone on the team or in the organization or their boss is not doing a good enough job as providing them resources, right? Survey feedback also can, assist the management with, some problem solution diagnosis, because the feedback will allow again others to uh, suggest some ideas that can be helpful in solving certain problems that you may not think of. Again, you're having a collective effort towards the a problem, and the people that are filling out the survey don't really think about the fact that their idea may be used to solve a problem. They may not even realize it's a problem, all right? And so having a survey really can get some thought brewing and can have some ideas put out there that are feasible and viable and will be taken under consideration as the plan or the course of action, right? Data are returned to employer groups at all organizational levels, right? And so again, once we get the survey, we can crunch the survey, get the results, and then interpret them, then communicate the results or the findings of those surveys, right? The sentiment of the surveys, whether or not, they're good or bad. The point is that we could convey whatever was found in the survey to the organization. Okay. And that's always useful because people want to know exactly what's going on as much as they can. Okay. And so when we do surveys, the data is used by our employees working together in their normal work groups to identify, solve problems. Okay. Again, it goes back to, being able to voice your opinion, right, in an open setting that's, comfortable and not necessarily, people aren't worried about facing any humiliation or anything like that. Um, and taking those particular, pieces of data, transforming it to information, and using that information and disseminating that to the entire organization so that they can use that information in their day-to-day job in solving problems that again are organizational issues, okay, at the end of the day. All right. And so when you look at the survey, the process, right, the first thing is we're going to gather data. All right. And the way we do that, surveys aren't just necessarily written surveys. You can have an interview process where people come in and they sit down and with a particular individual, and there's questions that are posed to that person, and they answer them, and those particular answers are annotated, and you move on, right? That again, that lacks anonymity, right? And so if you're doing it via interview, um, a interview type technique, then the person's going to know exactly who gave them the answers, and that may not necessarily give you the most honest answers because people are going to be worried about how their answers are going to affect their job. Okay. You can do data gathering to observation, right? Which we just call observational research, observational study, in which we just take notes down as we are seeing what's going on, as people are, behaving in their natural environment, not knowing that they're being, surveyed. They're just going about their business, okay? Just going about their business, all right? And then you have the questionnaire, okay, which is probably what people are more familiar with and comfortable with. Having a survey that you can fill out, you can add comments and that kind of thing, and it's anonymous, which I think is an important aspect because again, people don't necessarily want to be associated with negative things that they're saying in for fear of reprisal, fear of repercussions that they just don't want to deal with. They don't want to be worried about if they're gonna lose their job because they said they don't like their boss or they don't like the way this project was done or whatever the case may be. All right. Um, we also have now group feedback meetings, right, where we look at the data that was gathered, okay, and we review, right, all the results of the data, all right. And then within that, we look for holes or for look for problems that that are part of the data gathering process. All right, missing information, information that may be inflated or deflated, bias, right? All those things that go into they're just human nature. Okay, mistakes that are just done administratively, or fat finger as far as like it was supposed to be a 3, but again, I pressed the 3 too quickly, and I actually pressed the 4 or wasn't looking. Those kind of errors. where we have in statistics type 1 and type 2 errors, right? Where some are calculation errors, and then some are errors in design and or research approach, right? And so we want to look at those results of the data we've gathered and figure out, are there any issues with this particular data and how we collected it. Did we use the right data gathering technique, right? And then after that, we have the processes, okay? And so as we look at the process analysis, we examine, the group processes, right? We develop plans for improvement. We look at, the data and figure out what's the best way we can take this data and build, processes and techniques in which that we can implement and really institute some change, some positive change within the organization. All right, so now, as we move along in our, effort to change something within the organization, and I mentioned it before, there's going to be resistance, okay? There's no change that goes without resistance. And so when you look at the change and you're trying to combat resistance, one of the ways to do it is to um, kind of demonstrate what the benefit is to the change. And in many instances, once the resistant individual or group sees what the benefits are, then they tend to accept the change and to move on if they can see the benefit. If they can't see the benefit, it's very difficult for them to accept the change, and it will continue to be resistant. All right. Um, in many situations, organizations resist change when the change threatens the organizational structure and the control systems. And so, what I mean by that is that if the change is going to change or have some impact on me as a leader and the people that I am over, or there's a change in, who I have to report who do I have to ask for to do certain things, you're going to run into some resistance because no one wants to give up power. No one wants to give up that position and that authority if they don't have to. And if they're used to it and they're used to making the decisions and being the final stop, they're not gonna, be open to that being taken away from them. And so you have to again address the situation in where you have to illustrate the benefit of the change, right? Even if it's a change that's detrimental, not necessarily detrimental, but it's going to reduce or take away some control and power from a particular person. You have to show them the benefit uh, in the change and how it's going to benefit them individually, right? Maybe it lessens their workload. Maybe it provides them more time to do other things. Maybe we will give you more robust projects and things because now we know that you have more time on your hands and you're more free to tackle more, complicated issues. There's a number of things that you can do to illustrate or to show the person that is being affected by the change as to why they should want the change, right? Organizations must balance stability, right, with the need to react to external shifts. Okay, so this is basically saying, hey, we have to be able to look at a change, right, or see something come down the horizon and figure out, is this really for us, right? do does this thing that's coming that I want to change, is this something that's going to bode well for the company? Is this change really that impactful, or is it something that's a passing fancy, right? Is it just a fad? And so you have to look at that, and you have to go to again, you know keep things stable. As I mentioned earlier, you don't want to have any disruption or interruption in the operations, in the way people are accustomed to the organization working, right? And so you want to make sure that with that you keep things, a certain way, okay? And so um, you have to make sure that you know the change doesn't necessarily disrupt or really discombobulate the stability or the day-to-day operations or how we operate. Okay. Um, and also resistance can be kind of a warning um, of a need to re-examine the need for change, right? So if we have resistance, it may cause us to look at the change we made and say, maybe that change wasn't necessary because there's so much resistance to it that maybe we didn't need it, right? Maybe everybody was happy with the way things were, and there was no need to really have any significant change uh, when it comes down to it. Okay. Okay. So now we looked at resistance to change and sources of resistance to change, right? We have organizational sources, which is overdetermination, threatened expertise, threatened power, anything, some of these things I mentioned earlier before, right? There's going to be a disruption or there's going to be a change in people's level of authority, maybe people's level of autonomy. Maybe there's going to be a change in, the work hours or, how they work, and who they report to and that kind of thing, right? There may be a change to where their responsibilities are culled down to a few things that they don't necessarily are happy with or not excited about, right? The individual sources, like I said, economic factors, social factors, habit, right? Now I have to change the way I do things, and the old adage is if it's not broke, why fix it, right? That's going to come into play, and people are really going to be nervous about the security of their jobs, right? And so that's going to cause them to resist because the longer they resist, the more they are in the place that they're comfortable and they're used to, and that makes them feel secure. The minute you talk about change, they may not feel as secure in their position as they did before. This is table 16.3, and it highlights the and gives examples of the sources of organizational resistance and individual resistance, right? And you can tell, you can see some of the stuff that can cause resistance in some of the examples uh, with that. So keys to managing change in organizations, right? You can look at global issues, okay? How are we faring as compared to the global environment, okay? Um, you can say, well, here in the United States we do this here, they do it this way in Europe. We're going to change to the way they do in Europe because it's more cost effective, or it makes more sense to be aligned with the companies that we work with, the partners that we have, um, because we can share resources and that kind of thing, right? You can take a holistic view of the organization. You can say, hey, overall it's going to benefit the organization. I know it's going to be kind of a challenge for your department or your section or a particular departments and sections, but as an organization, we're going to fare better. And at the end of the day, you will fare better for that. Uh, you can also just start small, right? You don't have to make the change all at once or make it a big change. You can make a minor change here and there, and so that it's noticeable, but at the same time, it's not being just dumped or put on the person all at once, or the section or department or the organization in general all at once. Okay. You definitely want to secure top management support. You want to make sure that there's a change agent that is from the top, that has the influence and the authority to make decisions, and people know that, and they're behind this change, right? That will definitely help to mitigate some of the resistance, and that particular person can go out and really talk to the masses and reassure the workforce that these changes that are being made are in the best interest of the company and of the workers, right? Encourage participation by those affected by change. That's always a good approach, because now not only do I want to change something, but I want you to be part of the change, right? I don't want you to just execute the change. I want you to contribute and give input as to what you think the change should be, how you think we should do the change, and those kind of things, right? And once people are kind of read in and they're vested, they're more likely to accept the change and not resist as much, because then they get an understanding of some of the minute details and some of the things that may not have been discussed, or discussed in a general sense, but now they get into the nuts and bolts of it all. And then you want to definitely foster open communication, right? Which, in my opinion, is really one of the best ways to affect change and to mitigate um, resistance. Is to keep people in the know, all right? Keep people in the know. Let people know what's going on, when it's going on, how it's going on, what the status is, and that kind of thing. All right. And I'm not saying every day, but maybe on a weekly basis, or maybe every, few weeks, or whatever the case may be. Again, depending on the scope of the change, you want to make sure that people are able to get information about the change, and they're also able to ask questions and receive feedback and receive answers to their questions. Right? If they get answers to their questions and they're happy with those answers, then great. If they're not, then they can go back and just request more information or want to know more about it. But there has to be some mechanism in which the lines of communication are open between the workforce and the transition management team and the change agent and the organization, all at once, right? And also, as an incentive, you want to reward those who contribute to change, right? For those people that pick up very quickly on the change, or accept the change and embrace the change very quickly, maybe faster than others, maybe there's some incentive in displaying that, right? And saying, you know what, we're using a new system, and if you get to 50 orders in the new system, then you get $1,000 bonus or something like that, right? And so there's incentives or rewards that you can implement in which you can, help to facilitate the acceptance of the change. Right. Again, here's another table that's considering the keys and then the impact of each one of those particular things. All right. So when we talk about learning organization, right? We talk about an organization that facilitates the learning of all its members and continue to transform itself. Continue learning and change are part of the culture, right? And so if we have a learning organization, we have an organization that is always looking to better themselves, always looking to, you know, enhance their skill set, right? Enhance the skill sets of the organization, enhance the skill sets of the people within the company. And it's a mindset that is, permeated throughout the organization, because it starts from the top, and it's just the way we do things here. Okay. It's a perpetual state of learning, always wanting to learn more and get better at things that will make my job better and easier and more efficient and productive, because that's going to lead to better results for the organization, right? And so once you have that going and have that organizational culture, that will, elevate your company to another level, right? As I mentioned before, I used to work for Toyota, and Toyota was definitely a place where they always encourage learning, right? It was always, hey, pick up another skill set, make yourself better. Where can you learn something that's going to benefit not only you, but it's going to benefit or increase your your acumen in your job, which will result in a tangible increase in your productivity, right? And so they can see that, right? Because the measurement, the way we evaluate, success is really through productivity. At the end of the day, the bottom line is, how much profit, how much money did we make, right? We may have an increase in revenue, but that may come with an increase in cost also. So that may offset each other. But if we have an increase in profit and we can directly tie that to some of the changes that we made and some of the ways that our organization operates as far as the culture and it being an environment for always trying to learn and get better, then that's a good thing, and that's what we want to see, right? After action reviews are, critical, right? This is part of the feedback sort of loop, right? After we've implemented the change and we get feedback from the employees and from the workforce and from the leadership and everyone, we kind of put it together and we summarize all these things, right? We summarize the whole change, right? From the beginning of the change, right? From the unfreezing to the change to the freezing, all the components and elements that went into it, what the change was, how do we, how did we implement it? What are we looking for as far as metrics to evaluate whether or not it's good or bad? Some of the things that we probably wouldn't do again. Some of the steps we took, maybe they weren't very good, and next time we would do this instead of doing that. So really, it's about kind of uh, documenting the successes and failures, right? And having that archive so that next time we endeavor on a change or some kind of project, we can reference the after action, right? Because it will tell us exactly, the last time we did it, this is what we went through, and these are the things we did. Because it can serve as a playbook, it can serve as a guide for someone who has to do the same exact thing, but they have to, they can use that as a way to, as a path to follow. So, if you look at the after action review, you have to keep in mind that the whole point of the action review is to have documented um, uh, artifact that shows, the whole process and the whole thing that was done as far as the change. But it's all about learning, right? It's never to say, someone, did something wrong here, or, someone did something great here. That's not the point. The point is to really take a step back at what has happened, and to evaluate the situation as a whole to see what the best practices were and what are the things that we won't do next time because they weren't value added, right? And so you have to make sure that you convey that thought, to people that are listening to after action reviews and going through after action review, or sometimes we call hot wash, um, because it's all about just getting better, not necessarily about assigning any blame or anything like that. Okay. And some of the questions that that you would ask, excuse me, that you would ask during the after action, right? What was supposed to happen? What actually happened? What were the differences? What did we learn? Right? There's other questions too. What what procedures or methods were more effective than others? Was there a point where we could have changed something to do something else? So there's a variety of different questions that can be posed in order to have a good after action. But the after action is always useful because people get to listen to the facts of the endeavor, and then they also get to comment on those things because now they will add detail as to what occurred maybe during that particular period of time, right? Or that during that event. Yes, it may be documented within after action, and documented in some place within the report, but at the same time, if that person that was actually involved in that event or endeavor is there to explain to everyone, in real time, and being actual as to what occurred, it adds a different level of understanding to what happened, and it's definitely a good learning tool. All right. So with that said, this is the end of this particular chapter or brief. It's been a pleasure being your instructor for this course. I hope you guys learn something and can take away some of the points that we discussed and apply them in your day-to-day work life and your personal life also. And so if you have any questions or any comments or anything you need from me, please feel free to reach out to me via text or email. And I look forward to being your instructor again and having you in my class. And good luck in all your future endeavors.